Last year, Father's Day began like any other. I was always the first one awake, unable to sleep in. So I knew it would be a while before my 18-year-old wife and daughters, ages 18 and 17, would wake up and join me for Mother's Day each year. I'd make a nice breakfast for my wife, followed by mimosas for lunch. I'd serve her a cheese, fruit, and nut plate with a bottle of good white wine for dinner. I'd grill her favorite dinner, steak, and baked potato, and pair it with a good Cabernet Sauvignon. When the girls were younger, they would assist with breakfast and the obligatory waiting on mom, hand, and foot. However, as they grew into teenagers, I was left to spoil them on my own. Not a big deal. My wife usually reciprocated by making me a special breakfast. But I grilled the steaks for dinner on Father's Day. This year, on Father's Day, I waited for my wife to wake up so she could make me breakfast, which she never does on any other day. She has no idea, but I usually eat something small around 6 a.m. I'd be starving if I didn't eat until she got up around 9, which is early for her on a weekend. When she awoke, she kissed me, wished me a happy Father's Day, and started preparing a special breakfast for the family for lunch. We went to a kitschy little Doctor Who themed sandwich cafe, and overall it was a pleasant day. Life follows the calendar and knows when all of the important dates are. She manages everything from holidays to children's activities. A dry, erased calendar hangs on the side of a cabinet in the kitchen. Every Hallmark holiday school event, half-day, and so on is recorded on the calendar. Nothing is ever missed except when I miss something, of course. The following year, as my wife was writing down the dates on the calendar at the end of May, she said, "Hey Bill, your birthday is on Father's Day this year." It was not the first time it had occurred, so I was not surprised. I said, "Sweet, don't skimp and cheat me out of 2 gifts." Katie responded with a laugh. "If you were cheated out of a present, you'd never let me forget it. I'll have to do something special for you this year." The weeks leading up to my big day were unusual in our household. My wife was acting oddly by working late, snapping at me and the girls for minor infractions, and dressing up more for work. She was the bake shop manager at our neighborhood grocery store. She had never worn makeup to work before but started doing so around that time. She also wore a smock over her outfit, which included a button-down white dress shirt and slacks. She'd been leaving an extra button undone, revealing more of her ample cleavage. When she went out without me the Friday before my birthday, I began to have second thoughts. She spent a lot of time with a core group of married couples, so she rarely went out with the girls by herself. If someone invited her out for drinks, she'd tell me where they were going and I'd meet them there. It wasn't like I was an ogre who wouldn't let her do things for herself. She always said she enjoyed her time more when I was with her. It made me feel better. And I thought our marriage was pretty strong because of little things like that. I did not do much outside of our social circle without her either. It simply worked for us. We were not party-goers or heavy drinkers. Our idea of a relaxing Friday night was to cuddle on the couch and watch a movie or two together. That's why I was surprised to see her walk down the stairs on Friday, dressed to kill. She wore a new short skirt, nude stockings, and high heels. She had also clearly been to a tanning salon and had her hair done. I whistled at her and asked, "Crap, honey, did I forget we were going out? Allow me to get dressed quickly." "No, Bill, I'm going out with some coworkers. I figured you could get a pizza for yourself because our girls are also going out." Shocked. She never mentioned it and it was not on her cherished calendar. "You did not tell me you had plans." "I figured we could catch up on our shows tonight." Crossed her beautiful face and then she caught herself and relaxed. "Sorry baby, I was asked just today." I made it clear that I looked her up and down before saying, "So you just found out today within the hour? You left work before me. You purchased a new skirt, went tanning and had your hair done." I was becoming angry. She was lying to me but I couldn't prove it. I could not believe she was cheating on me. It was not in her nature to do that. She was the typical suburban soccer mom, wife and mother. Our sex life was excellent. We still made love several times per week. There was absolutely no reason for her to cheat on me. She snapped at me. I worked a half day per day. I wanted to look good for a change before I could reply. She walked out the door without saying anything, leaving me wondering what the hell happened. I waited up for her and she arrived home shortly before midnight. Her hair wasn't down anymore. It was pulled back into her usual ponytail. So much for having her hair done. She walked past me without speaking and went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. All I could do was shake my head, wondering what she'd done to necessitate a shower before bed. She did not come down. Nor did she say goodnight before going to bed. I knew something was seriously wrong. In my idyllic little world. I wondered how wrong it was. Do I work in retail management? So I worked the next Saturday morning. Normally, when I got ready for the day, she would wake up and kiss me goodbye before falling back asleep. That morning, I received nothing. I was once again taken aback when I arrived at the store. Missy was waiting by the entrance. Missy worked as the morning barista at the coffee shop in our big box store. She was a cute redhead with blue eyes, just as happily married as I was. I could not help but notice her. I've always had a thing for redheads. "Hello, Bill," she called out as I approached the entrance. It was still locked because we had a half hour until the store opened. Maybe the night crew guys could have let her in. But as she previously stated, she did not feel at ease being alone in the store with a group of guys. "Good morning, Missy," I said as I opened the door for us. "What happened to Bill? You look like someone killed your cat." "Sorry. I have a lot on my mind today." She gave me a strange look, but then let it go. "Give me a few minutes and I'll serve you a cup of our finest." He forced a smile and spoke. "That sounds good. I will see you shortly." I locked the doors as she dashed off to get the cafe ready for the morning rush. I knew she'd be extremely busy. As soon as the store opened, the mornings were always reserved for our small coffee shop. I did check in with the crews, preparing their departments as I walked the floor. I always did a morning walkthrough. It wasn't necessary, because I had a fantastic team of department managers. But it did give me the opportunity to say hello and make some small talk. I thought it was important to have a good rapport with my team members, and I believe they appreciated my efforts. The final stop on my walkabout was the coffee shop, where Missy had my large black coffee ready. 1 cup of Megamart's best brew. "Thank you, Missy." I sat down to box on the counter. "No bill. It is on the house today." "No way, Missy. I pay for everything here. The last thing I need is someone getting angry with me and reporting me to corporate. Despite Bill, I would never." "I did not mean you, Missy. I can't take the chance even for $1 to coffee. You'd be surprised at the things I have to put up with. If I deny someone a day off, their overtime will be cut. It's simply not smart, device fairness." I waved goodbye and sipped my brew. I'm sure some of the employees received free coffee now and then. There is no effective way to track it. And really, who would want to? It's far too much work for cheap coffee. I could not imagine watching hours of video to see if everyone had paid. Being a top dog came with risks. Employees would get upset about the dumbest things I had called on me because I enforced our employee parking policy. Seriously, calling HR over. Forced to park in the back of the lot. Ridiculous. The day ended rather uneventfully. My most exciting experience was an elderly lady stealing cat food and birdseed. It was exactly the type of day I needed. I was busy enough to avoid stewing over my newfound issues with my wife, but not so busy that I couldn't complete everything on time. When I walked in the door, my wife and daughters were leaving for a moment. I was surprised, but I checked the calendar. My daughters said as they kissed my cheeks goodbye. My loving wife didn't say anything. They were attending a concert with some of the other mothers and daughters. It had been planned for some time and was on my calendar as it usually is. I forgot. I had hoped to speak with Katie and get to the bottom of what was happening. I hated not knowing what she had done the night before. After not thinking about it all day, I had nothing to do but think about it that night. I used the opportunity to do some snooping. I checked her email but assumed it would be a bust. And it was. Nobody sent emails anymore. So I couldn't check her texts or call log. So I went to the hamper and checked her clothes from the night before. But since it was Saturday, she had done her laundry. I got nowhere. After watching a movie, I went to bed with no better feelings about my marriage than before. I'm deep into my birthday Father's Day combo and proceeded with my usual morning routine. I sat outside on my patio with some toast and coffee, enjoying the morning. It was a beautiful day, and I listened to the birds chirping as I imagined what my special day would bring. I walked inside to refill my coffee and was surprised to see my wife and daughters awake and packing a lunch. "What's happening?" I inquired, perplexed as to why they did not have me prepared to go somewhere. My daughter Jill said, "We're heading to the beach," I said, then walked upstairs to get ready for the lake. As I was putting on my shirt, my daughter Jenny called out, "My daddy." "See you later." The door closed and I looked out the window to see my wife and daughters driving away. I could not believe it. I would not expect the girls to remember my birthday. I had to remind them of their mom's birthday and Mother's Day. But I couldn't understand why Katie didn't remember. I walked downstairs, dejected, and my phone rang. I rushed over hoping they would notice and were going to tell you they'll be back for me. But no, it was my mother. "Hello, Billy. Happy birthday and Father's Day." "Thank you, Mom. Does Katie have any big plans for you today? She took the girls to the beach a few moments ago." "Really? That is not like her. I bet she'd make you a nice breakfast and make your day extra special." I'm not sure what is happening right now. Honestly, she has been acting strangely for several weeks. Well done. Make a fuss about it. She's probably planning something special for later. I've got to get to church. I love you, Billy. Love you, Mom. Someone had to love my mother. She was an eternal optimist. And she loved Katie as if she were her own flesh and blood. She and Katie had made regular visits since my father died a few years ago. Katie wanted to make sure Mom didn't become too lonely. So while I was wondering what the hell was going on with my marriage, the phone rang again. It was my assistant manager and Bill. "We had an incident at the coffee shop this morning." "What happened?" "Missy was on a ladder when she was bumped by a customer. She lost her balance and fell." "My God. Is she okay?" "She was taken to St. Alex's for an x-ray. She might have a broken arm or something." "Darn poor girl. Did you receive shift coverage?" "Yes, we are all set. I didn't want you to be surprised tomorrow. Sorry for bothering you on Father's Day. Do worry about it. And thank you for the call. I hoped Missy would be okay." They spent some time around the house before deciding not to return. So I headed to IHOP for breakfast. It turned out to be a bad decision for my mental health. There was a lengthy wait, and families were everywhere. I saw happy families celebrating fathers and grandfathers. I left before I started crying. I drove through McDonald's drive-thru and got a large breakfast with coffee and orange juice. The pancakes were surprisingly good. As I ate them in the park with a plastic fork and knife, I looked out over the small lake where I used to take my daughters paddle boating when they were younger. They adored the water. Whether swimming, boating, or even fishing, they enjoyed being at a lake. They are older and almost in college. They lost interest in fishing. I suppose looking back, they lost interest in spending any time with me at all. Their mother accompanied them on all of their outings back then. That's probably right. Shopping for clothes with Dad would undoubtedly be a drag for a young girl. At 1 p.m., I had not heard from my wife. I only assumed there would be no lunch together. Dee went to the Doctor Who cafe and ordered a Reuben. Of course, it had a show-related name, such as Revolution of the Day, Lex Reuben or something. It's just as silly to be a 40-year-old man who doesn't know what's cool. I took a photo and checked in on Facebook. My friends and associates responded with the usual likes and Happy Father's Day comments. Oddly, my mother-in-law mentioned that she thought I was at the beach with my wife and daughters. It appears that my wife was posting beach photos on her Facebook timeline. Dee finished my sandwich and went to a sports bar near my home. I hadn't seen a ball game in a long time, so I figured I'd drown my sorrows in Miller Lite. The bar was crowded and I was not in the mood for it. So I went to the cigar lounge next door and got myself a $1.60 Opus X. Happy birthday to me. Dee down and turn on the Sox game. And a couple of guys playing cards. Invite me to join them. I'm Bill, I said, introducing myself to the elderly gentleman. And this is my brother, Jerry, nice to meet you both. They finished their hand and dealt me into a little 5-card draw game. Help yourself, Bill, Lance said, kicking a cooler to the ground. I thanked him and took out a Miller Lite. Or does X have him with her new man? Jerry asked with a smirk. I frowned and stated, my wife and girls are at the beach. It appears that they do not know what day it is. Lance added, I don't see my boys often, both are the service. Jerry nodded and replied, my baby girl lives in California. My grandson Charlie has just turned 2. I'm going out there next week. That is nice, I said. My girls are 17 and 18. I'm starting to miss having little ones running around. They nodded knowingly. After some small talk, we eventually returned to the subject of my wife. Do you think she truly forgot? Or is she avoiding you on purpose? Jerry asked. That was a great question, and one I had been thinking about. I told them about the last few weeks leading up to Friday night's problems, and they shook their heads. She is cheating on you, Lance said. Jerry nodded in agreement. I can't believe it. But as soon as he said it, I knew it was the only explanation that made sense. And I was trying to convince myself she wasn't. Lance said, I have been through this before. The shift in demeanor. The sudden nights out dressed as a slut. The disrespect. I have been there and done that, pal. My wife screwed a coworker a few times. And when I found out, I divorced her, which was the biggest mistake I'd ever made. What? I snapped. She cheated on you. How could divorcing her have been a mistake? In my opinion, there was no valid excuse. Cheating meant the end of a marriage. Plain and simple. Period. This is the end of the story. Bill, I was broke for 5 years, while paying her alimony and child support. Every day I missed her, loving her from across town, in my lonely apartment, while she was alone at my house. She may have cheated on me, but I was too cowardly to forgive her at that point. It took 7 years, but we finally got back together. We're happy now, I said. Giving her body to another man is the most insulting and disrespectful thing my wife could ever do. If what you're saying is correct, and she's having an affair, she's either so preoccupied with her lover that she forgot my birthday, or she's intentionally ignoring me. Either way is unacceptable. Lance shakes his head. Bill, trust me. If you truly love her, you should find a way to forgive her. You will be better off in the long run. 40-year-old men don't get second chances in love. You've given me plenty to think about. That may have been what I said, but I was thinking he was insane. I can't forgive her for having an affair. There was no way I could stay married to her. I shook both men's hands, wished them well, and left. It was almost dinner time when I sat on my couch and browsed Facebook. I was even more saddened when I saw my daughter's and wife's posts with photos from their happy day. Screw it. I thought I needed to grow up and stop acting like a lost child. My wife forgot my birthday. This happens. She had forgotten Father's Day. Who cares? What matters is that I was certain she had cheated on me Friday night, and most likely several times in the previous weeks. She was acting strange, rubbing it in my face. Had to be her final strategy. She did, in fact, end it all. It was time to plan for the rest of my life. I decided to go to my favorite restaurant for dinner. I knew there'd be a long wait, which was fine. I didn't have anything better to do. So I showered, dressed in a sport coat and slacks, and went out for steak. I was waiting for a table at the steakhouse bar when an older man sat next to me in the open spot. He frowned when he saw my champagne bottle and one glass. Fortunately, he said nothing. He simply ordered a martini. The bartender refilled my glass. I guess the man couldn't help but ask, "Are you celebrating alone? Or did I take somebody's seat?" "No," I replied. "You are fine. I'm here alone." He nodded and sipped his beverage. He must have worked in sales, because he couldn't sit quietly. He said, "Yeah, I'm waiting for my 3 generations of Red Fury. My wife is helping my daughter who broke her arm today. I guess she's struggling with using her left hand." He laughed and added, "You don't expect your adult children to break bones." I assumed those days were behind me, so I nodded in agreement with him. It looks like I'll be cooking for myself for a few weeks. My wife will have to care for Missy and Mia, leaving me on my own. My head snapped up. "What have you said?" before he could respond. A little girl screamed at Grandpa from across the room and dashed through the crowded bar. A small flop of red curls jumped onto his lap and showered the man with hugs and kisses. A moment later I heard Bill. I turned to see Missy, and what I assumed to be her mother standing beside me. Her mother was almost identical to her, with the exception of a few lines around the eyes. They looked exactly alike. "Hello, Missy. How is your arm?" "It's okay. I'm on some strong painkiller, so I'm not feeling much. However, it hurt like hell when they said it." Missy introduced her parents Jack and Mary to me. "And then there's Mia. Her adorable little girl. "Where is your wife, Bill?" she asked. "It's done." "No. She took my girls to the beach this morning. And I haven't heard from them all day on Father's Day. Worse than that. It is also my birthday today. My God. Did she let you down on the best day of the year for you? What is her problem?" I didn't want to get into it. And ended up saying more than I should have. I shrugged my shoulders. "Please get her. You must join us." Mary spoke emphatically. I understood what Jack meant with his red fury remark. "I did it. You don't want them to gang up on you. It isn't pretty," Jack said with a snicker, revealing his years of experience. "Being ganged up on by them. But this is your day, Jack. I do not want to intrude." "Yes," he said. "It is our day." "Grandpa, you said." "I know, Pumpkin. I used a bad word. Grandma will punish me later, Father." He winked at me as their table's buzzer sounded. "Bill, settle your tab and meet us at our table." He spoke in a drill instructor's tone. "No bailing on us." He threw a toe on the bar and walked away. "Bill, my parents can be stubborn." "Don't worry, Missy. I suppose it's preferable to eating alone." The dinner conversation was light. Bill and I told stories about our daughters' childhoods. And Mia asked many questions. She couldn't stop laughing at her mother's embarrassing childhood stories. After dinner, my phone rang. I saw it was my wife and ignored the call. Setting the phone on the table. "Did your wife?" Mary asked. "Yes, is it more than you're letting on?" Missy asked. "I believe so, but I have no proof." "Everyone make mistakes," Mary said, staring directly at Jack. "Perhaps you can find a way to forgive her." Mrs. Head snapped over and glared at Mary. I called the waiter over and gave him my credit card. "Okay, I've ruined enough of your meeting. Thank you, Bill, for inviting me to share your meal. Let me. It was an honor to eat with you. And particularly one of my favorite employees. It's on me. Happy Father's Day." I shook their hands and went over to the waiter's station to sign the check. I didn't even have solid proof that she was cheating on me. However, I had already been told twice that I should forgive her. What was wrong with the people? Dawn called again and again. I ignored it. When I pulled into my garage, I was greeted by two whirling dervishes who bestowed kisses and hugs, while profusely apologizing for abandoning me on Father's Day. "Girls, do not worry about it. I do not expect you to remember when my birthday is." Jill, it's your birthday." Scream. Then she stormed into the house yelling at my wife. "Daddy, we didn't know. I'm very sorry." She sobbed on my chest. "You must hate us. I love you more than life itself." When she asked us last night to go to the beach today, we jumped at the opportunity. We did not think. It's okay. Do not worry about it. I'm not mad at you. I did not tell her. I was angry at her mother. But that was my issue. Not my daughter's. Get in. I walked through the kitchen, ignored my crying wife. Was scolded by my daughters. And then went up to change clothes. After putting on shorts and a tank top, I returned through the war zone to find my wife sobbing alone. "I am so sorry," she mumbled. I shook my head and walked out onto my deck, holding a beer and a cigar. It was a beautiful night and I was enjoying the peace. I'm thinking about work instead of my wife for a change. The sliding door opened. "What is his name?" I asked, cutting her off. He did not look at her. And she did not go any further out onto the deck. "Bill, what's his name? You screwed the man on Friday." My rage was rising. I heard the door closed, but she did not come out. She did not bother to deny it. I knew I would be seeing a divorce lawyer soon. Almost 20 years of marriage have gone down the drain. I married such a stupid woman. That's when my mind began to think the worst. How long had she cheated? Was he her first? Did I know him? Were these girls even mine? It's amazing how many negative thoughts enter your mind when you're treated so poorly. I decided to demand paternity tests for the girls as part of the divorce proceedings. It would not only provide me with peace of mind, but it would also embarrass Katie. I spent the rest of the night looking up divorce laws on the internet before falling asleep on the couch. What a way to celebrate my birthday! I awoke first at a gloomy 5 a.m. I found Katie sleeping soundly in my bedroom, curled up around my pillow. It's interesting how calm she appeared compared to how poorly I slept. She was incredibly beautiful. It was too bad she wasn't mine anymore. I'd miss her body. I grabbed my clothes and showered as quickly as possible. I managed to get away without waking her. But Jill was waiting for me in the hallway. "Is this Daddy?" I exhaled. This is as bad as it gets. Please forgive her. I mean, it's just forgetting a day, honey. She didn't just forget my birthday or Father's Day. She cheated on me. She gasped. No, Dad, she wouldn't. She must have. And I won't accept it. Think about it. She's been acting oddly for the last few weeks. Friday night, she went out dressed, revealing after getting a tan and her hair done. That certainly wasn't for me. She avoided me all day, Saturday and Sunday. She was obviously feeling either guilt or hatred for me, and didn't want to be around me at all. When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? That's always a family excursion. What if it's not an affair? What if it was only once? Can't you forgive her for just one time? I doubt it was, honey. But look at all of her actions. At any point this weekend, did she act as she loved me? Daddy, you didn't see the look on her face when Grandma called her to ask why she didn't call Grandpa and wish him a happy Father's Day. She dropped the phone and shrieked no so loudly. We thought Grandpa had a heart attack or something. He sloths. He's fine, Dad. Mom sobbed on her knees until we picked her up and sat her on the couch. She just kept saying she loved you over and over again. Honestly, Jenny wanted to call an ambulance for her. She thought she was having a breakdown. We calmed her and were able to get her to call you Jill. I don't know what you expect me to say. She doesn't love me. One can't cheat on their spouse and love them. That's not an action of love. It's selfishness. Love is supposed to be selfless. When she became intimate with another man, she cast me aside, hugged me and cried. I'm going to assume it wasn't some random guy she picked up in a bar. She had to have been flirting or accepting him flirting with her. There would be intimate touches. Maybe some kissing and fondling. All leading up to the first time she had sex with him. All of those actions before the sex are betraying your spouse. You cannot be in love with someone and show someone else. Intimate affection is don't divorce her. I have to go to work now. We'll talk later. She walked into Jenny's room. I'm sure to fill her in on what we talked about. There wouldn't be any more secrets in our family. I wondered how much longer we would be a family. I knew Katie would be too busy at work to try to call me or text me. So I had some peace for most of the day. The only thing that made it not a normal day was completing the forms for corporate related to Missy's accident. Did get workman's comp for her time off? And I hoped she wouldn't struggle too much. I didn't know anything about her personal life. Rather than knowing she wasn't married, she came in to sign the forms. and complete her accident report. I wrote it out for her, as she was not doing well with her left hand. And she signed it. "How are things at home?" she asked. "Not good." She didn't deny it when I confronted her about her affair. "I apologize. I'm sure you don't want to know my life story. But I do know how you feel. My ex-husband cheated on me while I was pregnant. I kicked him out before my daughter was even born. My mom was furious with me. She basically called me a quitter. Jesus, I thought it was odd when your mom mentioned forgiving my wife last night. She was looking right at your father when she said it. I noticed that as well. I'm not sure which one it was, but it makes me think one of them cheated. I apologize. They seem to be happy, so they are free to live how they choose. I choose to never trust a cheater." "Me too," I said firmly. "Decent home when I got home from work. She was probably screwing her stud. And I got pissed off. I got back into my car and drove the 2 miles to her grocery store. I saw her car in the parking lot. And to my surprise, she was sitting in it with a young man. When I stopped in front of her car, she noticed me and I could see her scream. No, she opened the door, but I drove off. If she was going to cheat on me, he could have her. I was done. I drove home and ran upstairs to pack a bag. I planned on staying in a hotel until I found an apartment. Before I knew it, Jenny and Jill were crying and begging me to stay. But your mother was just on her way to cheat on me. When I caught her, she was in the car with some guy. When I pulled up to her daddy, there has to be a mistake. Girls, I know what I saw. She had a man in her car. Why would she stay after work and have a man in her car if she wasn't going to take him somewhere? She can't say they were just eating lunch. There is no innocent explanation for sitting in the back of the parking lot after work with a man in her car. Dad, please don't break up our family. Jenny sobbed. Your mother broke up our family. This is not my fault. I pulled them into a group hug and kissed their cheeks. You girls, I'll be in touch every day. I left them crying in the bedroom. As I walked to the garage, as I pulled out, I almost got hit by Katie, pulling in like a bat out of hell. I shook my head and drove on. The next week was nothing less than pure hell. I refused to take calls from my wife. And for the first 3 days, she called me every hour on the hour. She must have taken the week off, because she couldn't make phone calls from the shop floor and had to be on the floor all day. She left countless messages, all begging me to call her. I deleted every one of them. After those 3 days, my mother-in-law, both daughters and Katie's sister, all begged me to talk to her. They all said it wasn't as bad as I thought. But every time I asked them if she cheated on me, they didn't answer. They all knew she had. They just wouldn't admit it. I stopped answering any calls from everyone. I told my daughters I'd speak to them, but their mother was not to be brought up. I had to hang up on them twice before they believed I was serious. At the end of the week, I visited with an attorney. A simple split down the middle was all I wanted. She could have the house until the girls moved out. We would sell it then. My attorney said I could get more than half of the house proceeds, based on my contribution to the down payment and monthly payment being larger than Katie's contribution. But I told him just to split it evenly. I thought alimony or maintenance was a foregone conclusion. But it turns out that since my wife makes plenty of money to support herself, I wouldn't have to pay her anything. That was the best news I'd had in a while. I wouldn't have to pay her to screw her lover. The only fly in the ointment was that I didn't have proof of her adultery. The judge might not allow it, and could downgrade it to irreconcilable differences. And I would have to prove we tried to make it work. I would take my chances. With my attorney preparing to file the divorce, life went on. There would be no forced mediation or counseling. There would be no lawsuits for alienation of affection. There would be no long drawn-out battle. The split was fair. And any judge could see that with a blindfold on. Nothing is that easy though. What she could do was fight. When she was served the papers, she unleashed the entire barrage of the family against me again. It turns out that she only screwed the kid one time on that Friday before my birthday. Or that's what she convinced everyone was. What happened? I was branded as the bad guy. Because I wouldn't let her explain. As if any explanation would be acceptable. My mother basically called me a wimp. Because I wouldn't fight for my marriage. My mother-in-law told me we were even. Because I was breaking my vows to. By not staying with her in the worst times. My daughters told me I needed to stay with the family. Because they would be scarred for life by our divorce. So real, I did nothing wrong. Yet I was being blamed for the divorce. Things hit the fan when I had my daughters give me saliva for the DNA test. They refused until I lied to them and told them it was an order of the court. Katie wrote me a letter that was mailed to my store. I read it and it said that she got caught up in the kid's attention to her. I say kid because the bastard was only 21. They only had sex one time in the back seat of his car. Like him being a dud was supposed to make it all okay. She also said that when I caught her in her car with the guy, it was to tell him privately to never speak to her again. It didn't matter. She cheated on me once and once was enough. Nice thing was that since she gave me the letter, I didn't have to prove adultery for the divorce. She did it on her own. It meant that I wouldn't have to file for irreconcilable differences and prove we tried to make it work. Karma was finally on my side. She tried to fight the divorce. But when the judge saw my offered terms and her letter confirming the adultery, he approved it. I would be divorced in 60 days. Hey there, I was a man alone on an island of desolation. Because I refused to talk to her. I was branded as immature and a jerk. It got so bad my mother and my daughter stopped talking to me. It hurt, but I was on the side of righteousness. And if they didn't like it too bad, I called my daughters every other day religiously. They never answered. But I left voicemails telling them what was going on with me and asking what was going on in their lives. I wouldn't let them blame me for not being on speaking terms. I continued to make every effort and reached out to them, no matter if they wanted me to or not. Doing that changed was I began to have coffee with Missy on Sundays. It started innocently enough when we bumped into each other at a local coffee shop. She and me lived in the neighborhood and were out for a walk. I invited them to join me and filled her in on my misery while Mia watched cartoons on my iPad. I'm sure your daughters will come around, Bill, she said. They are young and impressionable and are living with your wife. There's no telling what nonsense she's put into their heads. I hope you're right. I just hope they aren't too far gone. I miss them like hell. The following week I went to the same shop at the same time and was reading when I heard, "Hey stranger." I smiled and invited them to join me again. "Is this normal for you or are you stalking me?" she asked with a smile. "No, I live nearby. And I like to have a cup of coffee and read on Sunday mornings. It's kind of lonely at home. So I come here." She kept her cup. And we chatted about the neighborhood. Until we parted. It wasn't a conscious decision to meet every Sunday, but we did. I enjoyed her company. And little Mia was a delight, did. The divorce became final. I knocked on my old home's front door. My wife answered it. And it was clear she'd been crying. She didn't say a word. She just motioned me inside. Are the girls home? I asked. They are watching a musical at the school. I know why you're here. I expected you to come over today. Is that so? I asked with a smirk. You waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you? Yes, I said. I knew that you'd beg and plead. And tug on my trying to reconcile. And I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart. And there is no way I will forgive you. Did Bill, it was one time. One bad mistake. Why couldn't you forgive me? Why couldn't you find a way to stay with me? Didn't you love me as much as I loved you all these years? I laughed. Were you loving me when you were flirting with your dad? Were you loving me when you had him in your mouth? Were you loving me when you cheated? Were you loving me when you avoided me all weekend? And left me alone on my birthday? If that's your idea of love, you're beyond help. Wanted this to happen, she sobbed. I never wanted a cheating wife either. But here we are. She gasped and started to speak before I cut her off. Katie, not only did you break my heart, but you turned my mother and my daughters against me. I will never forgive you for that either. That's your fault for being unreasonable. I got pissed and said if you don't get my mother and my daughters to apologize to me and make it right, I will tell every man you date that you are a cheating loser. I will make it a point to ruin every relationship you ever try to have in the future. Because you ruined mine, didn't want anyone else. Wrong answer. I guess I'll just have to find other ways to hurt and embarrass you. Do leave, and she grabbed my arm. It's not my fault, you can't blame me. No, did I cheat on you? Didn't think so. You know what really sucks? You're letting your daughters grow up to believe it's acceptable to cheat on their husbands. Because of your behavior. They are going into adulthood, believing you are the saint. And I'm the sinner. And it's okay because it was one time. We'll screw that. I'm not going down because some kid made you feel sexy. I pulled her arm off mine and said, rot in hell for throwing our marriage away. I left her crying in my wake and didn't feel sad about it. 2 weeks later, Missy knocked on my office door. Got a second, Bill? Of course. Come on in. I frowned when she shut the door, expecting something bad was coming. Does the company have a rule against dating other employees? I hated her asking me that. I was hoping to get to ask her out. It looked like I was too late. Did we have a strong sexual harassment policy? That policy protects just about everything. A failed relationship between coworkers could damage. And if two people cannot work together after a breakup, that's their fault, not the company's. Good, that's what I was hoping for. She said as she placed a folded piece of paper on my desk. I asked my address and phone number. I expect you over for dinner tomorrow night. Mia will be joining us, smiled and agreed. Good, you're a good man, Bill. You deserve to be happy. And I'd like to give you a second chance at happiness. She dashed out of my office with a cute spring in her step. And I was looking forward to our dinner. Hi, it's Dad, checking in. I hope all is well with you and your sister. Usual stuff in my world. Except a woman at work asked me out to dinner. Well, anyway, I love you and miss you. Please call me soon. Bye. I knew leaving that message would cause some issues. But I still didn't care. I had to move on and I was excited. about Missy stepping up to the plate as she did. Missy was a beautiful woman, with an even more beautiful personality. Her daughter was precocious and adorable. And I already met her parents. I felt like I was finally ahead in the game. 15 minutes later, when Katie texted me, "I can't believe you're dating already. You're a real jerk." I laughed when I read it. I never realized how delusional she was. To think I would sit and stew over her was insane. Maybe some guys would lament and mourn the loss of their marriage at the hands of a cheating wife. But that wasn't me. Who was young enough at 41 to find love again? Hell, I was young enough to have more kids if I wanted. That was something to think about. Missy was in her early 30s. She may want more children down the road. I knew it was too early to have those thoughts. But as a single mother, those things were probably at the top of Missy's potential suitor's traits. I'm sure she was looking for a husband, not a plaything. Although I certainly was not opposed to being her plaything. I hadn't been laid in months. The next evening, I showered and shaved after work. And dressed casually. I looked in the mirror and didn't mind what I saw. I was in good shape with no spare tire or love handles. I had a full head of brown hair, with no gray hair peeking through yet. I had a great job that paid well. And I had money in the bank. I figured I wasn't a bad catch for any woman, let alone a younger woman like Missy. I realized that I had no idea how to date someone. When you're married, you're always together. And you know everything about each other. There was no issue with holding hands or kissing when you got home from a night out. You knew sex was on the table. There was comfort in the status quo. Jesus, I had to learn how to have sex all over again. Hope that the next woman I had sex with liked the same stuff or at least communicated well. I feared I wasn't ready to date. And I regretted jumping into the dating scene so quickly. I knocked on her townhouse door with a bottle of wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal. I figured it wouldn't hurt to get on me. As good sighed when she opened the door. I was blown away by what I saw. Her curly red hair was down over her shoulders. And she had the perfect amount of makeup on. She wore a billowy sundress that stopped about 4 inches above her knees, showcasing her wonderful legs. She was barefoot and her toes were painted hot pink, matching her fingernails. She laughed and asked, "Do I pass inspection?" "God, yes," I said before I could take it back. She laughed harder and took the flowers and wine for me. "Mia's watching TV. Go ahead and say hi. She's going to love the bear." She wandered off into the kitchen. And I knelt next to Mia. "Hi, sweetie. I brought you a bear." She cautiously looked up at me. And then lit the room up with her smile. She held out her hands for the bear. And ran off to show Missy. Once she got it into her arms, she brought back some good memories of Jenny and Jill at that age. I realized how long it had been since I spoke to them. And I missed them even more. "What's wrong?" Missy asked, snapping me from my thoughts. I forced a smile and said nothing. I was just thinking of my daughters when they were Mia's age. "Are things that bad now?" she asked. "Still aren't talking to me at all. Katie turned them against me. And I can't bring them around. I still try though. I leave them messages every other day in one stop. I'm sorry, Bill. I know it's horrible for you. Every day I understand. They listen to my messages, though. I told them about our date tonight. And Katie texted me to tell me I was a jerk for moving on so quickly. I apologize. It's not too quick, is it? She bit her lip and looked damn cute doing it. I said honestly. But I'm happy to find that out with you. She smiled and took my hand. Dinner is ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce. I have garlic bread too. So you have to be ready to deal with that later. When we're on the couch kissing. Dear, giggled and I stood shocked at Missy being so forward. She saw my discomfort and said, Bill, we are both adults and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of man you are. And there's not much getting to know you needed to know. I like you a lot. You're about to be a hot commodity. And I'm staking my claim early. Dear commodity, I asked. Yep, you have no idea. All of the scuttlebutt news of your divorce has caused in the store. Honey, you coming on? The market, so to speak, has many of the single ladies' attention. You're a handsome man in good shape. You're smart, stable. And we all know how you feel about fidelity. I was feeling pretty good when I sat down at her table. So I'm jumping in line early. She finished. I took her hand and squeezed it. I like you too, Mia. Not wanting to be left out, said Sketty. Is my favorite. It is ready to the Slurpee or the better. I said, I saw the can of Parmesan cheese on the table and added. And you got to have extra stinky cheese. She giggled and said. It's not stinky cheese. It's Parma Party. Hello, dinky cheese. I said, bringing the can to my nose. Pretending it was the worst smell ever. Who? That's extra stinky cheese, miss. She shook her head as I handed the can to Mia. She smelled it, shrugged his shoulders, and poured a generous amount onto her spaghetti. Kept the dinner conversation light. I asked about Mia's preschool class and her friends. She had no problem chirping away, telling me every detail she could remember. I thoroughly enjoyed the talk. After a while I realized Missy wasn't talking. She had a big grin and was merely watching me. And her daughter banter back and forth with each other. Eventually she started gathering plates. And I said, let me help. No, she hasn't told you about her favorite TV shows yet. She laughed as Mia started filling me in on all the best kids shows. After putting Mia to bed, Missy returned and sat next to me on the couch. I handed her a glass of wine, and she sighed contentedly as she lifted her feet onto the ottoman. I love being a mom, but sometimes this is the best part of the day for me. Instinctively I put my arm around her as she leaned into me. I said, it's worse with two. I bet it was. Do you think your girls will come around? I hope so. I answered pensively. I'm putting forth all of the efforts right now. But it's still raw for them. She turned and kissed my cheek. You're a great father. Just don't give up the fight for them. She set her glass down and sat back. Bill, I've already told you I like you a lot. And I'm too old to play the will we or won't we game. I would like to continue to see you. And that includes inviting you into my bedroom. I was going to tell her that we don't have to. But she lifted her shush finger. I know you want to be a gentleman and all that. But that's not necessary. What I'm trying to say is I don't want to be your buddy. Or friend with benefits. I'm warning you now that I am looking for an exclusive relationship. I have a daughter to think about. And honestly, she needs a daddy as much as I want a husband. I tried to speak again but once more got shushed. Denver station usually ends with the guy picking up and running. I don't think you are that way. But I'm giving you an out. If you want to sow your oats and test out the single life, I'm not your girl. If you want to see if we have a shot for the long haul, then I'm your woman. Wow. I said, did you prepare that speech or was it off the cuff? She frowned, misinterpreting my feelings. Missy, like you said, we've known each other in a working relationship for 3 years. These past few weeks of having coffee together have been very nice. Hello, family man. It's all I've ever been. I don't know how to be single. And the idea of dating scares the hell out of me. If my wife could have kept her legs closed, I'd still be a happily married family man. No, I don't want to play the field. She smiled and took my hand. I continued. You're beautiful, smart, and you make a mean spaghetti. I'd like to be your boyfriend. Consider me locked in towards building something good for all of us, including your little girl. We didn't make love that night. As much as I wanted to take her right there on her couch, I felt taking things slow would be best. She practically professed her love for me, and was coming on very strongly. I thought slowing things down would be better for my comfort level. I got a gift from the gods when I received an application for a manager slot I had open. You forgot the name of the punk kid. That ended my marriage. So I couldn't exact any amount of revenge on him. But when he showed up to interview for my overnight manager job, I recognized him immediately. I knew he'd never recognized me, but he might have recognized my name. So I had to interview him and hire him on the spot. The second night of work, I waited in the parking lot for him to begin his shift. I walked up to his NATO's beater car and placed a 40-inch TV I bought at a competitor in the back seat. We carried the same model, and I happened to know one of them was conveniently misplaced in the stockroom. In the morning, I timed my arrival to coincide with his shift ending. I walked him out to his car, idly chatting about what he thought of his team of guys. When we got there, I noticed the TV in his back seat and pretended to be shocked. Jeff, did you buy the TV before your shift? We aren't open yet. Bill, that's not mine. I don't know how it got there, Jeff. I think we need to go back into the store. Bill, you have to believe me. Check the cameras. I shook my head and said, all right, bring the TV. We walked back into the store, and the kid was scared to death. I thought he was going to cry at one point. We didn't have overnight security, because with the store closed overnight and having a night crew in the store, we didn't need it. What we had were cameras everywhere, and there was only one place the security cameras could be turned off. Only managers had a key to that room. There's a camera facing the door to the room, but it was above a doorway to the stairwell. I told corporate security about that issue a few years before, but they never rectified it. That made it easy to open the stairwell door, reach up and cover the camera with a piece of black tape. Then I turned off the security camera system. Well, technically I unplugged the computer that ran the system. When I walked him into the room, and he saw the computer wasn't running, he panicked and kept pleading his innocence. As I called the police per policy, all was said and done. The kid got a conviction for a minor felony and got no jail time. I had hoped he'd get a couple of months, but it wasn't an expensive enough TV. He had to perform a ton of community service and pay a fine, which surprisingly was more than I paid for the TV. With a felony on his record, he'd also have a hard time finding a job in retail. That made me happier, but still wasn't worth the risk I took. Did get a security upgrade from corporate out of it, which included parking lot cameras. They were long overdue. He was so stupid. He never figured out that I did it. He tried to blame the crew for setting him up, but couldn't prove anything. They didn't miss him when I fired. Did brisk Saturday morning. A week after my dinner with Missy, I saw her waiting in her car to stay warm after I parked next to her. She met me at my door and greeted me with a nice kiss. Are we still on for dinner tonight? She asked. Good, I've got something special I'm making for us. You won't want to miss it. Is this the tramp? Katie asked from behind me, cutting me off. Excuse me, miss. He shouted, her claws fully unsheathed. Katie, what do you want? I asked, annoyed. Dying to reach you. Did you block my number? Yes. After your 30 texts about me being a bastard. For moving on, I had enough. What do you want? I want to talk about the girls. We need to figure college out. They can go wherever they want. I've made sure the money is there for them. I'd like to be involved. But since you poison them against me, they want to speak to me. Afraid you won't pay for school? Of course I'll pay for it. I still love them even though. Because you can't keep your legs closed. I lost them in the divorce. Missy laughed. Katie glared at her and said, It's not my fault you couldn't forgive me for one slip. It was only once because you weren't discreet about it. I confronted you immediately. Whatever, you should still be my husband. We should still be a family. Delusional, you cost me my marriage. My family, my daughters, and my mother. I swear to you, you'd better never date a man. And I find out about it. You'll never see a second date. No one wants to date a cheating slut. Unless they know your reputation. And are just looking for an easy lay. I turned and walked towards the store. I heard shouting behind me and turned to find Missy. Having Katie backed up against the car. With her finger in her face. Away from my man. You threw him away and I picked him up. I ran back and pulled her away. She's not worth the trouble. You heard me, woman. She shouted at Katie. Before turning and walking towards the store. Please leave, Katie. We're done and that's your fault. Yours and yours alone. I left her sobbing by the cars. I ran to catch up to my huffing Missy and took her hand. She looked up and smiled at me as she slowed down. I'm sorry, Bill. I guess I was being too territorial. Do I like having women fighting over me? In the parking lot? It's great for my ego. We laughed and went inside to get some work done. That morning I got a call from my mom. When I answered, she grunted. Billy, I'm. She didn't finish. And I heard a thud. But the call didn't end. I hung up and called back to no answer. I called 911 to have them send an ambulance to her house. And they told me a call had already come in from her residence. Feared the worst and told Ann to cover me as I had to go. She understood. And as I ran through the store, I blew past Missy, who shouted after me. I ignored her and ran straight to my car. When I got to my mom's house, the ambulance was pulling away, so I followed it. When I walked up to the opening back doors, I found out she was gone before the ambulance arrived at the hospital. She must have lost consciousness when we were on the phone. I cried as I sat in the lobby of the emergency room. I sat there alone thinking of the last thing my mom said to me. What was she going to say? Would it have been? I'm in trouble. I'm having a heart attack. I apologize. My phone rang and it was Missy. Hey, my mom just died. Bill, I'm so sorry. Yeah, thanks. I'm afraid I won't be good company tonight. No, I'm going to be with you. You need me? Please let me come over. Yeah, I said I didn't want to be alone. And I was glad she was willing to be with me. I'm on my way home. Meet me there after you get off. Okay. See you soon. I ended the call and walked out to my car instead of driving home. I went to my old house. I needed to tell my girls whether they wanted to see me or not. Hold up. I saw both girls' cars in the driveway inside. I never imagined the first words we would speak to each other. Being news like this. I didn't care that I didn't live there anymore. I keyed the passcode into the garage door opener and walked inside. Katie's car wasn't there and I was glad about that. I don't think I was in the frame of mind to see her. Living room and kitchen were empty. So I went upstairs to the bedrooms. "Dad," Jill shouted as I walked into her room. "Do you want?" Jenny shrieked as she came in behind me. "Did you come to beg? Well, you can go to Grandma. Had a heart attack and died this morning," I said, cutting her off. "I just thought I should tell you that in person. I'll go to hell now." Walked out and closed the door behind me. I heard Jenny yell for me to wait. But I ran out to my car and drove off. I went to the little lake where I'd spent so much happy time with the girls. It was too cold for paddle boats. But the water was starting to thaw and was very peaceful. I sat on the picnic bench and cried again. That time it was for the loss of my daughters as much as my mother. The vitriol in Jenny's voice told me that I wasn't wanted in her life. She didn't have to tell me to go to hell. Her tone said it all for her. I wondered if I'd made a mistake somewhere along the way. Not with Katie, but with the girls. What did I do that was so wrong to make them hate me so much? Katie was the one that destroyed our marriage. Why couldn't my daughters understand that? How long? I sat there, but I heard someone walk up. I spun around and it was Katie and the girls. "How did you find me here?" I asked after turning around to look out at the lake again. Didn't disconnect our Find a Phone app sync?" Katie said. "Bill, I'm sorry about your mom." "Yeah," I spat. "Sorry for her death. Or are you sorry that you turned her against me and she died without us reconciling?" "Didn't say anything. Leave me alone. I cannot deal with your crap right now." I continued. "I'll never forgive you for what you've done to me." The last words we spoke were her telling me she wouldn't speak to me again. Until I manned up and dropped the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me when she hung up on me. "Sorry, Bill, for everything." I heard her walk away and Jenny said, "Daddy, we're sorry too. Please forgive us." Halo didn't. And they both lunged at me to hug me. We cried into each other's arms for what seemed like an eternity. "It's not my fault, girls. Why can't you see that what your mother did is the reason we aren't together anymore?" "We're sorry, Dad," Jill said. "We just thought that you should forgive her. She loves you. It's so obvious not enough to stay faithful to me." "Jill, I'm sorry, girls." "I'm very sorry." It's more as Katie watched from the warmth of her car. "Girls, I need you so much. You'll be off to college soon and I'll miss you. We're wasting so much time, do you get it, Dad?" Jenny said, "We want to shut you out anymore," Jill added. "Wish your grandma would have had a chance to do the same." "Dad, can we come with you? We haven't seen your new house. Maybe we could get a pizza. Tell your mother and let's go." When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Mrs. Carr. I'd forgotten she was coming over. "It looks like you're going to meet Missy. Is she your girlfriend?" they asked in unison, making me laugh. "Yeah, well, I mean, we just started seeing each other." "Look at him, blush, Jenny, it's so cute." They jumped out of the car and were at Missy's door in a flash. They peppered her with questions and I could see Missy had no idea what was happening. "Girls, let her be. Move it inside and I will introduce you all." They kissed my cheek and bounced inside my garage as I walked over to a stunned Missy. "Sorry about that," I said as she opened the door. Is smiled broadly and kissed my cheek. "Your daughters, come on. Let us get you formally introduced." I had known. "Honey, I must look disorganized." I laughed and replied, "You're fine. They're going to love you, Jenny. Jill, I would like to introduce you to Missy." They gathered and hugged her. "As usual," he said, "you're super hot." Jill jumped in and spoke. "Way to go, Dad." Laughed. I was too shocked to say anything. "Hey, let's take a quick tour of the house and then I need to get some things ready for Grandma's services. I will order some pizzas while you show them around." That sounds good, honey. You read my mind. Did the girls coo? I shook my head as Missy smiled. I decided to wait until the next morning to call and spread the word about my mother. I'd write an obituary for Monday's paper and share the service details on Facebook. After visiting the funeral home on Sunday. After dinner, we sat for hours telling Missy stories about my mother. My girls, not so innocently, included some embarrassing stories about me for Missy's benefit. It was not my fault. The pier was wet and I fell into the lake, I swear. They were fully aware of this. It was after 10 girls. Time has passed me by and it is getting late. Frowned and asked if we could spend the night. I don't have beds in the guest rooms yet. I tell you what, I will pick you up in the morning and we will go out for breakfast. Okay? If you're up for it, I could also use some assistance figuring out what to do with Grandma's stuff. I'll help you with whatever you need. Thank you, Missy. Do you want to go for a ride or do you need to get home to Mia? She is staying with my parents. Jill jumped in. Who is Mia? Demure is my 4-year-old daughter. They both squealed and Jenny exclaimed. My God, I can't wait to meet her. Daisy laughed at their excitement and promised someday soon. Okay, let's go out. Missy said, the wonderful girls, as we sat on the couch. Shortly after returning to my home. I'm glad you got back together with them. I exhaled. I agree. I just wish my mother hadn't died. She snuggled into my arms and when I woke up in the morning, I had fallen asleep holding her. She had us wrapped in a blanket and was still snuggled against me. I missed having that closeness with someone. Just the top of her head and said, I'm sorry I fell asleep on you. She moaned while stretching. It's fine, baby. You experienced a very emotional day. Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast? Only if I can bring Mia. My parents have plans this morning. My daughters will adore her. Since we needed to get Mia, I asked my daughters to meet us at IHOP. I walked in holding Mia's hand. My girls rushed over to her in seconds. Mia was in their arms being twirled through the air. Then they tickled and kissed her. She was squealing and giggling the entire time, wearing a big smile right up until she yelled. I was able to urinate. The girls all said, we'll take her, and bounced off to the bathroom. Do you think they will get along? I asked with a grin. She lightly slapped my shoulder and kissed my cheek. They will continue for many years to come. She said she was thinking long term. Despite the fact that we had only gone on one date. It was slightly unsettling. But I was confident I would get over it. We ate. Mia and my daughters talked nonstop about anything and everything. Mia clearly enjoys talking and not just about herself. She asked a lot of questions about my daughters' lives. I believe even my daughters were surprised. My daughters were the neighborhood's babysitters. As a result, they excelled at working with young children. They were familiar with all of the popular children's shows and movies, and they had Mia eating out of their hands. They got along well with Missy. My dating with her was free of animosity and anger, which surprised me. They refused to speak with me for months after my divorce. But once they met my new girlfriend, they became BFFs. I didn't understand that, so I'd have to ask the girls for an explanation. After making dozens of phone calls, beginning the lengthy process of cleaning out my mother's house, and visiting the funeral home, I was finally able to sit and relax. Giggles had returned to my house for dinner, while Missy and Mia had separated from us after breakfast. Missy felt it would be too emotional for us, and she wanted to avoid the discomfort of Mia being present, questioning everything as we sorted through my mother's house. Dad, are you in love with Missy? Jenny asked out of the blue. We have only seen each other a few times outside of work. It's a little early to call it love. Okay, Dad. Jill said as if I was an idiot. Have you ever seen those old cartoons? In which the girls' eyes flutter. And their hands fold next to their cheeks. As they look at their prince? I bit into a slice of pizza. As she bats her eyes at you? It's as if hearts are floating around her head. Jill said it before I could deny it. She loved me. They looked at each other. Then turned to me and said, "We like her." I went from being happy to see my daughters to being angry. I placed my slice on my plate, wiped my hands and proceeded to the sink. I was stalling, attempting to calm down. As I leaned against the counter, facing away from them, Jenny asked, "Girls, how can you break my heart after all this time? Now sit down and tell me you like my girlfriend. What did I do to you to make you think it was acceptable to shut me out? Ignore me and tell me to go to hell the first time I saw you in ages? What have I done? Do you know how many times I cried after leaving you a message you didn't want to receive? Dad made us." "What?" I shouted. "It'll answer it. It began when Mom told us that if you thought you were losing us, you could return to her. And we could be a family again. We're deeply sorry." Jenny jumped up to hug me when she noticed the tear on my cheek. "Daddy, please forgive us." After that, it did not work. She informed us that you had abandoned us and were not going to pay for college because we wanted you to stay with her. She explained that the messages you left were a ploy you used in your divorce to appear to be a good guy for the judge's benefit. Do you believe that? How would you react to sitting with her every day, hearing her defend her one-time mistake? Over 20 years of love? We believed you were being unreasonable, was I? Would you let your boyfriend cheat on you? Did not respond. Where is the line drawn? I inquired forcefully. It's time for 5. Please answer me. They began crying and we all hugged. Their embrace instantly calmed me and I felt terrible. Sorry, girls, I have missed you so much. After they each expressed their love for me, I said, "It's time to take you home. You have school tomorrow. Do not forget to include Mom. Inform them about the wake and funeral. You'll need time off this week." I did it once more. And I watched them drive away with a happy heart. I looked at the sky and said, "Mom, you didn't have to go get me the girls back. But thank you. I will miss you." Wakes are difficult for me because I've always been uncomfortable sitting in a room with a dead body. My mom's was especially difficult. I went over to the coffin several times during the day and looked at her. She appeared calm. I was glad she'd be seeing my father again. He died several years ago from cancer. He preferred a different type of service with no wake. He, like me, thought it was strange that people would hang out with a corpse. Mom had hers completely planned out. I suppose as people get older, they start to think about things like this. She even chose her coffin. All I had to do was schedule the time and day, as well as handle minor details of the room setup and service. I was relieved she'd finished it. I was standing in the front of the room, talking with one of her friends, when Katie and my girls entered. My daughters greeted me with warm, tearful hugs, while Katie thankfully left me alone. Katie walked to the back of the room and sat alone after saying a prayer and placing something in the casket. I looked to see what she had put in there, and it was a photo of Katie and me, with our arms around my mother. She was holding each of our babies in her arms with a mile-wide smile on her face. I took the picture she had tucked into the side and reverently placed it next to her hands. It was the first time I had cried that day. The minister wanted to start the prayer service. Katie had not left her position in the back of the room. She captivated everyone. It's impossible to be married into a family. For as long as she was without meeting people, they all loved her. The protocol called for the immediate family to sit in the front row of chairs. My girls were to my right and Misty was on my left. But something didn't feel right. I stood and turned. Katie remained in the back of the room, wiping away her tears. It didn't feel right to me. My mother would not have wanted that. Katie was equally her daughter and my wife. I walked to the back of the room, where everyone was seated, waiting for the service to begin. I was noticed after all, I had followed me. I extended my hand to Katie. "Come to the front, you don't need to hide back here." She began sobbing and hugging me. She whispered, "Thank you." As she released me, she said hello to the front of the room. And my Uncle John gave her his seat, which was next to my daughter. "You are a good man, Bill," Missy whispered after kissing my cheeks. It's the strangest feeling I've ever had. I'm holding Missy's hand and my ex-wife is just feet away. As we finished the day, I prayed that I wouldn't come to regret it and have a problem with them later. I was saying goodbye to the last few visitors when Katie approached me with Missy by my side. I was wondering what Katie would do. I was hoping she wouldn't start a fight, out of respect for my mother. "Thank you for including me and the family today. It meant more than you could ever realize. She loved you as a daughter. It was only right. That reminds me. You can ride in the limousine with us. And the girls tomorrow if you want." I got into a hug and cried. Missy's hand firmly touched my lower back, and I began to fear a cat fight. Katie broke the hug and said, "If you don't need anything from me, I'll go home." I shook my head, "No." And she smiled briefly at Missy. "I'm glad you are here for him. You may not realize it, but he was a mama's boy. It will soon hit him hard that she is gone." With that, she turned and left the room. He gave me a side hug and said, "Let us get you home." I placed my keys on the valet and entered the kitchen. I'm glad the day was over. Missy sat at the table and took a cold beer from me. "Everything with Katie went better than you anticipated. You handled things well." She said this while I was enjoying my cold. Samuel Adams. "Yes, I'm glad. I was expecting her to start something with you. I'm sure the girls helped in that regard. We just have to get through tomorrow and we'll be fine." I hope she was correct. I'm not sure why. I had a nagging feeling Katie wasn't handling or interacting with. Well, I suppose I was simply paranoid. "Please stay with me tonight," I asked. She smiled and took my hand. "You could not kick me out if you tried." She spooned with me but did not make love. And it was the best night's sleep I'd had since my divorce. "You keep a close eye on me. I'm not going to use your gift to start an argument." Katie spoke as we waited for the prayer to begin. Did I know I'd lied? It's simply uncomfortable for me. She snorted and said, "How do you think it feels for me? I'm the outcast here. Nobody thinks that of you. Particularly not today." I sincerely apologize, Bill. I wish I could have prevented it from happening. I wish she started crying and dashed to the bathroom. It's difficult for all of us, Bill. My mother's friend, Jean said, patting my shoulder. Your mother was a wonderful lady and we will all miss her. I kissed her cheek and thanked her. I'm glad Katie had my mom's cover for her outburst of tears. Following the funeral, we were seated at my mother's favorite Polish restaurant for lunch. It was a crowded room and Katie was uncomfortable. As she searched for a seat, I approached her again and led her by the hand to the table where I sat with Missy and my daughter Katie. We will always be family regardless of the divorce where we sit. You'll always be welcome. A tear streamed down her cheek as she sat and thanked me. I'm not sure when I got over it, but I felt like I was finally over the pain she had caused. Life went on. The girls went to college and Skyped with me every week. Missy and I are still together. And I'm almost ready to pop the question. Katie and I do not speak often, but we are friendly. She's also moving on dating one of the girls' friends' divorced father. He's a good person. I hope it works for them. Some would argue that I should have forgiven her for a one-time mistake. But I simply do not have the capacity to do so. That may make me a bad guy in some eyes. But I can live with myself. Thank you for listening to the story today. Please like and subscribe if you like what you hear. Please leave a comment to share your thoughts on what happened. Please do not hesitate to contact me. If you have a story to tell about your or another person's situation,